Even after more than 3,000 years, the enigma surrounding Egypt's Queen Nefertiti continues to captivate archaeologists and history enthusiasts alike. The period in which Nefertiti ruled alongside her husband, Amenhotep IV, marked one of the most turbulent chapters in Egyptian history. Together, they abandoned the traditional gods and introduced a new religious system that concentrated absolute authority in their own hands, a move that was deeply unpopular among the population. Known as the mistress of both Upper and Lower Egypt, Nefertiti was far more than a queen. She was a priestess, a wife, a mother, a political disruptor, a symbol of beauty, and possibly even a pharaoh in her own right. What follows is an exploration of the mysterious life and uncertain death of one of ancient Egypt's most fascinating figures, beginning with the religious upheaval that defined her era. The identity of Nefertiti's parents remains unknown, though several theories have been proposed. The most widely accepted suggests she was the daughter of a powerful royal advisor named I, who would later ascend the throne after the death of King Tutankhamun. Another, less supported idea claims she may have been the sister or cousin of Akhenaten himself. Such close familial marriages were not unusual among Egypt's royal households. But a different theory proposes that Nefertiti was a foreign princess from Mitanni named Tuduqipa. Her name, which translates to "the beautiful woman has arrived," has led some to speculate that she came from outside Egypt. Like the other possibilities, this theory lacks definitive proof and raises as many questions as it answers. Although the exact date of their marriage is unknown, it is believed that Nefertiti married Amenhotep when she was around 15 years old. At the time, he had not yet become pharaoh, but he rose to power soon after, and the pair are thought to have ruled together as equals from approximately 1353 to 1336 BCE. During their reign, they had 6 daughters, each bearing names closely associated with the royal family and their religious beliefs, and they may also have had a son. The royal household resided in several palaces and ceremonial complexes around Karnak. Then, one of the most remarkable was a temple known as the Gempatan, dedicated specifically to Nefertiti. Records indicate that an elaborate festival was held there during the 3rd year of their reign, with depictions showing the royal couple and their daughters observing the celebrations from a privileged vantage point. Art from this era frequently portrays Nefertiti and Amenhotep as inseparable, even showing them sharing public displays of affection, an unusual detail in royal Egyptian art. This intimacy has led some scholars to believe their marriage may have been genuinely affectionate, a rarity among pharaohs. Nefertiti is thought to have remained loyal to her husband, despite evidence that he fathered children with other women, possibly including the future Tutankhamun. Throughout her life, Nefertiti held numerous grand titles, including Hereditary Princess, Great of Praises, Lady of Grace, Sweet of Love, Lady of the Two Lands, and Mistress of Upper and Lower Egypt. Inscriptions describe her as a queen deeply involved in every aspect of court life and governance. She also served as High Priestess, a role that positioned her as the primary intermediary between the people and the sun god Aten. This placed her at the heart of both political and religious power. One of the most intriguing aspects of her legacy is how she was depicted in contemporary art wearing the crown traditionally reserved for pharaohs. This imagery has led some archaeologists to suggest she wielded authority equal to her husband. There is even evidence to support the idea that after Akhenaten's death and before Tutankhamun's reign, Nefertiti may have ruled alone under the name Nefertiti. Nefertiti also appears to have been an unusually hands-on ruler. Among the many images of her found in tombs and monuments is one showing her poised to strike a foreign captive with a weapon. This depiction suggests that one of the most powerful women in Egypt, a co-ruler and sacred representative of Aten, may also have played an active role in enforcing royal authority. Of course, it is also possible the image was symbolic rather than literal, but it nonetheless contributes to her formidable image. When Amenhotep IV ascended the throne, he inherited a wealthy and dominant kingdom. Together with Nefertiti, however, he transformed Egypt in radical ways. Their most significant change was the establishment of a new state religion centered on the worship of the sun disk, Aten, replacing the long-revered god Amun. A new capital, Akhenaten, was built more than 200 miles north of the previous center of power. The traditional gods were gradually erased from public life, their temples closed, and their priesthoods forced to convert. An entirely new city, known today as Amarna, was constructed specifically for the worship of Aten, and citizens were ordered to relocate there. To emphasize their devotion to the new faith, the royal couple even changed their own names. Amenhotep became Akhenaten, meaning effective for Aten, while Nefertiti adopted the name Nefertiti, which conveyed the beauty and favor of the sun god. To further consolidate their authority, they declared themselves the only legitimate priests of Aten. These sweeping reforms were deeply unpopular among the Egyptian people, but opposition was dangerous. Defying the pharaoh often meant death, and so most citizens complied in silence. Over time, Akhenaten grew increasingly intolerant of Egypt's traditional religions and any beliefs outside his own. He launched a prolonged and costly campaign to wipe them out entirely, draining the kingdom's resources and pushing the state into debt and instability. The nation slipped into economic strain and political unrest, and conditions were steadily deteriorating. Matters might have become far worse for ordinary people had Akhenaten not died before the situation fully collapsed. After ruling Egypt alongside her husband for roughly 16 years, Nefertiti abruptly vanishes from the historical record. The reason for her disappearance remains unknown, but several explanations have been proposed. Akhenaten and Nefertiti caused immense political and religious upheaval during their reign, and those who followed them may have worked deliberately to erase their memory. Documents were destroyed, monuments dismantled, and artifacts defaced, meaning the final chapter of Nefertiti's life may have been lost along with them. Another possibility is that she simply died, a theory supported by the fact that her daughter Meritaten later appears in records as the great royal wife during the final years of Akhenaten's rule. This could suggest that Meritaten stepped into her mother's role after her death. A different theory argues that Meritaten did not disappear at all, but instead became a co-ruler under the name Smenkhare. According to this view, she governed alongside Akhenaten near the end of his reign and continued ruling after his death until Tutankhamun was old enough to take the throne. But, notably, Meritaten is also recorded as the consort of Smenkhare, further complicating the picture. In 1898, the tomb of Amenhotep II was excavated in the Valley of the Kings, revealing 3 unidentified mummies hidden behind a concealed wall. Among them was a young woman whom some archaeologists suspected might be Nefertiti. More than a century later, DNA testing conducted in 2010 concluded that this so-called younger lady was actually Akhenaten's sister and the mother of Tutankhamun, seemingly settling the debate. However, that conclusion was challenged a few years later when another scholar argued that the mummy was in fact Nefertiti herself. If this interpretation is correct, it would mean that Nefertiti was Tutankhamun's mother, reopening one of the most contentious debates surrounding her fate. Another enduring mystery centers on the famous bust of Nefertiti, which depicts the queen with one eye left blank. This unusual artistic choice has puzzled scholars for decades, especially given that her name is directly associated with beauty. Several explanations have been suggested. One theory proposes that she may have had a natural physical feature affecting her eye, something not unheard of at the time. Others argue the missing eye was meant as a subtle insult, or that it was simply damaged over time and never restored. A more romantic interpretation suggests the sculptor who created the bust fell in love with the queen and intentionally left the eye unfinished after being rejected, symbolizing her inability to see his devotion. Nefertiti's beauty has become legendary, with surviving busts and reliefs portraying her as possessing ideal features admired in ancient Egypt. However, some modern researchers believe these images may not be entirely accurate. Using advanced imaging techniques on the famous bust, scientists discovered that beneath the surface layers lay a more realistic depiction. The underlying form revealed subtle imperfections, including a slight bump on the nose, fine wrinkles around the mouth, and less pronounced eyelids. These findings suggest the artist may have deliberately enhanced her appearance, creating an idealized version rather than a true likeness. It is also possible that Akhenaten himself insisted on portraying his wife in an exceptionally flattering way. Whatever the reason, the iconic face recognized today may differ significantly from how Nefertiti actually looked in life. In 1912, archaeologists uncovered the now famous bust of Nefertiti and transported it to Germany under an excavation permit issued by the Egyptian authorities of the time. How this permission was obtained remains unclear, especially given the complex political situation, with Egypt influenced by multiple foreign powers. By 1913, the bust was on display in Berlin. During the rise of the Nazi regime, it was seized along with other valuable artworks and hidden for safekeeping. After the war, the sculpture was eventually recovered from a salt mine and placed in a museum in West Berlin. Years later, it was returned to its original museum following reconstruction after wartime destruction. To this day, Egypt maintains that the bust was unlawfully removed and considers it looted property, continuing to dispute Germany's claim of legal ownership.